works. Hello, you can hear me. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. We have 30 minutes. I will talk about chatbots and the UI and why chatbots are the new UI as I see them. The track is about microservices, and I'm going to talk about microservices. But before we start, I'll try to give you the definition of microservice in this particular presentation. By microservice, I mean it is something that it is a service which is available through traditionally RESTful API or some kind of API, and which helps us to manage some kind of database and maybe other assets. So basically, we break down the bigger system, and that's the trend now. When you build big systems, you break them down into smaller pieces, and they call them microservices, and they communicate to each other. And when these microservices are becoming more advanced and more powerful, you inevitably will have to have some sort of UI, some sort of interface to them. So you will need to communicate with them not only through RESTful API, but some sort of user interface. And my point here today is that I think that the RESTful API, together with the user interface, potentially in the future, and I'll show you some examples, will be replaced by a better mechanism of communicating with these microservices. So this is how traditionally, just one diagram here. So I'm not gonna show too many diagrams. So look at this diagram. On the left side we have a user who is. This is more typical. So on the left side we have a user. On the right side we have a service, a microservice, a web service, something which gives us some, which helps us to do something. The service is designed as something hosted, which manages the database. There are some assets, maybe some servers, some resources, some files, whatever. And we have a UI component which accepts requests, HTTP requests, and then transfer this request, will understand this request, and then transfer them to the service in order to produce some results. This is a traditional architecture. What I'm suggesting, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking is probably the future, and it can be a better approach, is to do it this way. So instead of having this UI component between them, instead of asking the user to connect to the UI and then connect and then talk to the service, to the microservice, we put something in the middle, which we call a message hub. It could be Slack, it could be, well, we use GitHub, it could be IRC. So it's some place where computers and people can talk to each other. Like, you know probably what a chatbot is in Slack. So when you talk to somebody, and then the chatbot can join your channel and also can post some messages, and you can post some messages to the bot. In microservices, and we've done it in practice, you can do the same. You can put a, oh, I have the screen here. So you can put a component between the user and the service, and this component will be a message hub where they both will communicate. Why is better than this approach? So basically, there are two slides. This one shows that this is the traditional way how it works right now, and this is how I'm suggesting to do it otherwise. So what's the key difference? The key difference here is client versus server. So on the traditional situation, the microservice is a server. So it's staying and waiting for requests to come in. So it acts like a server, traditional, not client-server architecture, but it's a server. So it's somebody who has to be online 24/7, listening to requests and giving answer immediately. What I'm suggesting, if you use chatbots and this message hub, you will have the microservice will become a client. It's not a server anymore, it's a client for the message hub. It goes to the message hub, it talks there, but it acts like a client. So this is, on the right side, we have these lines, these arrows. They go from the left to the right, which means that requests are coming from the left to the right, and the right side has to answer the request. On this diagram, you see that the arrow comes up. So now the web service, the microservice, is a client. It's not anymore accepting requests, it's instead connecting to the message hub and talking there. So it connects when it wants to connect, it connects when it's a good time for it to connect. It acts as a client. That's a key difference, which gives us a few serious advantages, which I'm going to summarize now, and we're done. So I'm basically going to show you 6 things which I think are important. And that's what I want to show you. So the difference is a client versus a server. So we are changing the role, we're changing the mission of the microservice, from being a server to being a client. What does it give us? 6 benefits. I think there are 6 important, maybe there are more, but I found 6 important benefits which we're getting if we do it this way. The first one, you don't need to be fast anymore. So the microservice doesn't need to be fast because it's not a server anymore. It doesn't need to answer in 10 milliseconds on all requests. It can take a little bit longer. It can take a minute, it can take a few minutes. Because it's a client now, it connects to the message hub, you post a message there saying do something for me, and then it takes maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, and then you get an answer there. So the microservice is also connecting there and does something for you. But the delay between these 2 requests and answers will be way longer, and it will be acceptable by the client. The client will not expect you to answer immediately. Because if you are a server, then we definitely expect you to answer on my HTTP request or RESTful API in just 10 milliseconds. In like 1 digit, that's 1 digit rule, so that should be like 1, 2, 3, up to 9 milliseconds. If it takes longer, then something is wrong. But that's really difficult to design that system which will answer that fast. If you're acting as a client, nobody is expecting you to be fast, so you don't need to be fast, because clients will expect you to communicate in this chat on a normal, like, a few seconds or sometimes a few minutes of acceptable delay. So that's the first benefit, which is, I think it's important for us, the developers. So I'm speaking from my personal experience. So I designed the chatbot a year and a half ago because I needed to create a system which had to do some DevOps operations for us, for our team, and that was really important for me. So I didn't want to spend a lot of efforts and a lot of time to design something which is really fast. It's difficult being a developer, being an architect. If you do it as a chatbot, you don't need to be fast. The second advantage, you don't need to look nice anymore because there is no UI for you. There is no UI anymore. Like on the previous diagram, I told on the first diagram, I showed you that these microservices, they have traditionally RESTful connection, RESTful entry point, and the UI entry point. So there is some UI involved. So that when people are talking to these small services, microservices, then there is a UI. And on the market now, to have a really nice, a very good looking UI is a critical element for success in the market. If you're making some small service and it doesn't have the good looking UI, it doesn't have the pretty buttons and fonts and everything, you have small chances to succeed. And amount of money and amount of efforts you will spend on a good looking UI will be like 80%, maybe even 90% of your whole budget. So instead of creating the microservice which actually manages the resources, manages the database, and does what it has to do, instead you will spend time and money on designing the good-looking UI. If it's a chatbot instead, you don't need to look good because nobody knows how you look. You don't have a UI. All I know from you is that you are present in the Slack channel, and I post you messages, you give me answers. So there is no UI involved. And that's why the budget is way smaller. And that's why all your money and time will be spent on actually creating the microservice instead of making it look good. This is, again, for us developers, that's a critical success factor. For me, it was. When I started to create this microservice, I'll give you the name in the end, I didn't have a lot of time. It was just me, just a developer. I had just 2 weeks, to do that. I just didn't have time to make it nice. And when I make it a chatbot, it's cool for everybody. Nobody knows how it looks. It just works. It just does what it has to do. So that's, I think, is important for development. Number 3, it's much easier to scale. Why it's much easier to scale? I mean, it's much easier to make it bigger, to handle more requests, because I'm not acting right now as a server who is supposed to accept any amount of requests and any moment of time, and to be able to scale horizontally, to be able to add more machines automatically, to somehow load balance this traffic. That's a different story, quite difficult to implement. On the other hand, if you are a client, then it's easier to make the client scalable because you just add a few more machines, and these more machines just basically duplicate your solution, so you scale horizontally, and they all act as clients, so they all connect to the message hub. In our case, it's GitHub, so we are using GitHub as a communication platform between developers and our machine and our chatbot. So the GitHub is a powerful platform for communication, for talking, and we can start many Heroku. We host on Heroku. We can start many instances there, And it's really easy to scale. If that would be a server where people come to us online and use our interface, it's a completely different architecture. It's way more difficult. So you need, like I said, you need load balance somehow. You need to somehow make sure that you're 24/7, and in 24/7 you answer in 10 milliseconds. So scalability is a big problem when the systems are going big, and if your microservice is a client instead of a server, you can easily scale horizontally. First of all, you just make many machines, and you basically synchronize somehow your database level, your persistence level, and that's it. Just keep your data like we are keeping them in DynamoDB, and that's enough. So DynamoDB handles parallel requests pretty well, and that's our only concern. So that was number 3, I guess. Number 4, in total there are 6. The bugs are not visible. That's also what I experienced. I don't think it's like I can say this is a rule for everything, but I think that's what I see personally over the last year of work of our chatbot. When something goes wrong on our side, on the server, the clients in most cases just don't see that because there is no UI. They don't go anywhere online to check how we're doing, to get answers immediately. They just post some questions to the messaging thread where we talk, where the chatbot is present and they are present. They just post a message there, and we just don't have an answer, for example, for a minute, for 2 minutes, for 3 minutes. Maybe we have a huge problem on the server. We have delays, we have, I don't know, disk overfull, and something is wrong, and we don't have an answer in time. And it takes, instead of 30 seconds, or instead of 1 minute, it takes 5 minutes. The clients do not complain because they don't understand that we have a problem. If they go online, if we would have a UI and a RESTful API, then if they connect and something goes not as they would expect, they're immediately going to tweet about it, they're going to complain about it because they experience that. In our case, to experience a problem, we really need to have something really bad, like no answer at all, for example. Like they post a message, do something for me, and then don't answer for 2 hours. In that case, they understand that we're just down, so that our chatbot is not answering. But that happens once in half a year. But we have many smaller problems every second week, and they don't see that. So users do not understand when we have problems, which is good. So we understand that. We have logs, we have reports, we have this information on our management back office, but they don't see that. That's a great advantage, I think, for using chatbot instead of using UI, because you basically decouple yourself better from your customers. So the customers are staying. Well, you have a middleman between you now. You have this messaging platform, which is an advantage for programmers. And number 5, everything is traceable. We have a platform between us. We have, again, we're using GitHub, but you can use something else. And this messaging platform where communication between bots and people is happening. We can see what was there, what were the requests, and what answer our bot gave to this request, and we can trace it back to the beginning of the conversation. So this is not possible if there's a UI. In the UI, they just get to the system, the users, they click some buttons, they do something there, and they just log off, and it's difficult to reproduce and see actually what happened, why the error was there, what was really not so as they expected. So it's less traceable, and well, you can make it traceable. You can design your logging system as good as that, like log everything, how they move the mouse, where it was clicked, but how much effort that would take. In this case, it's just a conversation where you can see the question, the request, the answer, the request, the answer. I'm saying something to my chatbot, do this for me, start, in our case, it's like I said, it's a DevOps automation server, so we post messages there like, start a server, build something on my server, and let me know how it went. And then the bot says the bot says immediately, okay, I'm going to start it right now, and then in 5 minutes it says, yes, it's done, I just did it, it took that amount of time, we started that amount of servers, we did this work for you. That's a conversation. And then I can jump into this conversation in a few months and see what exactly happened there. So this traceability is really important, again, for developers. Because when I develop it, I want to know how my customers communicate with me, with my system, and I want to trace this. I want to know later what happened a month ago or maybe a year ago. So this, in case of GitHub, they don't delete my logs at all. They just keep this information forever. We have some projects where we just started the development of this bot a year and a half ago, and I can still jump back to that time and see how that first version of the bot was communicating with the users. It's not achievable in case of a UI. It's really difficult, and it's almost not possible. And the second thing here is that it's not only traceable, but it's really easy, accessible, and it has this log, this information is kept in a system which is way more powerful than I can develop. For example, it's Slack, a communication platform which enables login, logout, a beautiful interface, the mobile version, all that features, which I, as a developer of this microservice or this service, I just don't want to spend time on doing all that. I don't want to develop the login, logout feature. I don't want to develop the functionality of the mobile app. I just don't have money for that. All I want to do is this microservice, really microservice, which will be just doing the thing, I'm just the unique stuff on the market. Like in our case, we have this the Java application, this chatbot. It's quite small. It's like really not a big amount of Java code. But because it stays on GitHub, for our users, it looks like a GitHub, not a plugin, but it's part of GitHub. While it's not part of GitHub, it's just our application hosted on Heroku and talking to GitHub and listening to what people are saying on GitHub. But because there's a lot of functionality provided already by GitHub, it gives us a lot of, we don't duplicate this functionality. We don't spend time on developing it. And that's, I think, is the future for developers in general. Instead of every time starting a service or some system online and starting from login, logout feature and all these nice, beautiful things for the UI, like restore my email, change my my avatar. That's a lot of things which are already implemented somewhere in Slack, for example, or in some other system. So we just reuse it. So this traceability comes with a lot of functionality from the platform, from the messaging platform. And I'm saying that that's the future, I think, in general, to stop developing everything from scratch, starting from, okay, this is my domain name, then we enable logging, then we enable everything, user management, because we want to keep our users in our database, and we basically every time start to develop everything from scratch. This is not necessary anymore, because we have quite powerful platforms which allow us, our services, to connect there and talk to people there as chatbots. And the last one. The last one, it's easy to integrate, and that's probably the most interesting. It's less technical, but the most interesting in terms of future. If these chatbots will be, if we start designing systems as chatbots more and more, then eventually in the future we will start seeing that chatbots are talking to chatbots and to us. So we will be able to integrate a number of solutions in the same conversation. Now we have just me talking to some chatbot, getting answers, and that's it. But we will be able in the future to connect more machines, and these machines will start talking to us and to each other. And that will be a way better strategy for integration, for integrating pieces together than RESTful APIs. Because they all will be decoupled through this central place. So there will be a central place between them, which is the messaging platform, where they will post messages and understand messages using some languages. I don't know which languages is going to be in the future. Maybe it's going to be something which will look like English, or it will be some analysis of this text and doing some semantic analysis. I don't know. Right now we are using just simple a few commands. You can give us a few commands, we can give you a few answers. Because our chatbot is quite simple. But in the future, we may have chatbots which will be quite powerful, and not for fun, not because now we have also the solutions, people are doing these funny chatbots which you can talk and you will not understand whether it's a human or a computer talking to you. But I'm not talking about that. This is more like fun, I think. But the practical approach is that you can make these chatbots without you can make these microservices without user interfaces, and they will become just chatbots who will talk to each other and communicate and solve some tasks together. That's, I think, is this like strategic future. I believe so. And we tried that. So besides, I'll show you the. So basically, I finished my slides. So we have 10 minutes. So I'm expecting maybe some questions, And then I'll give you the name of this bot and you will check it online how it works. So we just have 30 minutes, so I don't have time to show you, to demonstrate you how it works in practice. But you can check it online and see how it actually helps people. But what do you think? What's your feedback on all this? Yeah.
You actually changed the look of the bots over the UI and all that. So it obviously like recommended in a sense. It looks like the UI item is the bot.
Yeah, that's right. So basically the UI is replaced by the bot. So that's the question. Huh?
What's the question?
The what?
We couldn't hear the question.
Okay, the question is,
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if you could actually see when they use a bot instead of like a UI item, instead of like a menu, like UI menu, if you have like a bot in there and it looks like a menu item, like a hybrid menu item bot, and it just changes the UI item.
I think I'm not really understanding entirely what you mean, but I think that the UI is the UI. Let's look at it like on a more philosophical note. So the UI was invented because it was invented years ago in order to teach us to speak the language of computers. So we created these forms and buttons and fields because this is how computers think. So we normally think in terms of English language, in terms of the natural language mostly. And the forms and the UI, the user interface, was invented because that's how it's easier for computers. So I think that the chatbots for technical tasks is basically a good replacement for the UI. So the UI will eventually, again, it's my just prediction, but the UI will eventually become less and less popular idea. And talking to systems, talking to computer systems in English will be more and more popular. So we will have this new UI thing, and that will be the UI. So it's just an implementation. So that will be the UI component. We have also in our system, this is the name of the system. So it's called Rulter. You can check it online. It works on GitHub. You can go to any GitHub ticket, to any GitHub issue, and say Rulter, @ and Rulter, and then hello. And it will answer you right away. You can check it now. So you just say Rulter hello, and it will give you an answer immediately. So it just basically monitors the entire GitHub, like all the projects on GitHub. And if anywhere you say something to this bot, the bot will immediately answer you and say, what do you want me to do? And then you say, I want you to deploy my project to my server. And it says, okay, I'll try to do it right now. So there is no front end, there's no UI, you don't need to create an account, you don't need to register your project there first. You just go to GitHub, the already existing repository, you open any issue which you have, and say, Rulter, hello. And then boom, the answer is there. Yes, I'm here, I'm listening to you. And then you say, do this for me. And they said, I don't understand what you want. This is the manual for you. Just check this help page, and then you will understand what I can do for you. And then you start learning and learning and learning, and eventually you will start using it. We have about 300 people using this system right now, 300 projects on GitHub. And they all learned that experience without any UI. I never taught them anything. I never talked to them. I don't know who they are. We just created a few help pages, a few manuals, and every time they say something which the bot doesn't understand, the bot just says, hey, there's a manual for you. Just check it out. And that's it. So there is, again, no UI, and the bot is quite simple. It just understands about 10 commands. That's it. But that's enough for the test. So we just did, my point is that it's microservice. It's not a huge system. It's not something, enterprise solution with a big amount of screens and documents and formats. It's just something which does one specific thing for us. It basically starts a Docker container, and inside the Docker container builds a solution and deploys somewhere. It's quite niche operation for software developers and architects, basically DevOps. But that's what it does, that's it. But it does it well. It does it well, and there is zero UI in our application. We didn't create any UI. We didn't create any HTML, CSS, this nonsense, because we don't know how to do it. We're not professionals in that. We just know how to start a Docker container, how to make it stable, how to make sure it actually does what it does, to configure the security, to start new machines on Amazon, all that stuff. That's what we know. That's what we created this microservice for. So that's probably it, yeah.
So you mentioned that you see the future going towards talking to bots talking to applications, and bots talking to applications.
Yeah.
How does that differ from simply implementing an API and making applications aware of other applications? Why do you need bots to do it?
Yeah, I got it. So the question is, I'll repeat the question. So what's the difference? Why do we need bots talking to bots instead of making these microservices just connect to each other through RESTful APIs and make the JSON requests and responses, right? And just process this information like it's done now. The key problem, the key difference here is in the JSON requests and answers, there are no people involved. So I can't see how these bots communicate to each other. It's less traceable for me, it's not readable for me. I cannot become a part of this communication. Like I'm saying, the future is that computers talking to people, talking to computers. So in these conversations, there are not just computers involved, there are also people involved. And if there are XML, JSON interfaces, to get people involved, these people have to be developers, architects. But I can't just invite the CFO to this conversation and say, you know what, if you need something, if you need this invoice to be sent to the customer, just say, send invoice for $5,000. Boom, it's sent. Just can't do that.
What you're basically getting at then is you want to use the bots to humanize the REST calls.
Exactly.
So the average person can read it rather than a developer.
That's right, yes, yeah. So I'm saying that the bots is a next step in making these interfaces more open to humans and at the same time be understandable by computers. So I'm kind of trying to integrate, so now instead of integrating computers to computers and then putting people on top of that and placing the UI layer between them, so you need to talk to the UI and the UI will talk to these elements, and these elements, how they are connected, only the group of developers understand. But instead, we just get our business people or not technical people into this conversation and they start talking to machines and the machines start talking to machines as well. So that's the far future. Yeah, you have the last one.
What about when text-based responses aren't? Like, Wayne, a good way of displaying. So, like, for instance, if you wanted to make a request and you want some data back, like a graph may be more useful than just numbers. So, like, how do you get around that? Because
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes I can repeat the question. Sometimes there's just enough a text answer, like give me something, this is the answer for you. But what happens if the answer is more complex, like you need a document or you need a picture, you need it, right? You need some graphic information. In our case, when you ask our bot to deploy something for the server, we just do it and the result of this deployment is a 10,000 lines long, for example, which is also kind of a binary, well, not a binary, but it's a huge text document. So we can just post it back to the chat. What we do is that we deploy this piece of document to Amazon S3, and then we post just a link there and saying, you know, I'm done. You want to see the full document? This is the link. Go there and check it out. So you don't need to put all the information into the conversation itself. You can say, here's the link, check it out. Here's the document, I sent it to you by email. Or here's the file, which is available somewhere on Dropbox. All you need is just to keep the conversation in one traceable thread. But the links can lead to some other third-party resource. Again, here's my Twitter, the same on GitHub. You can follow me, you can come later to me, I'll give you my card. I have a blog, I write about it. So please follow, let's stay in touch. Thanks for coming.